Hello, today I get the privilege of introducing you to my new friend, Alyssa Evans. Alyssa, unbeknownst to me, well, I followed you on Instagram and I thought, how come she knows me? And tell me how we met, sort of.
We were stationed in Kingsland, Georgia, and you were a guest speaker at I think it was a women's retreat that we had at our church, and you were a guest speaker for talking about hospitality. And you had some books for sale, and I bought some, and
You
I
did?
followed
Oh,
you.
thank
I
you.
continue to follow you. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a great group in Kingsland, Georgia. That was a long ways away. Yeah, I spoke Friday night and then I think twice on Saturday,
Yep.
and they were such a welcoming group. You sort of touched on it. You are a military spouse, but a little before then, you told me that you were adopted from foster care and not connected to your family. Does that mean your birth family?
Yes. So I've never met my father. Actually, we even share the same birthday, which is interesting, but we've never met.
Hmm.
And I was in and out of my mother's home my whole childhood. And then when I was 10, I moved from Wisconsin to Washington State from Wisconsin to Washington State. And I was adopted from there. And so then after I turned about 18, due to some life choices that I made from walking away from the Lord, my adopted family kind of just parted ways. And so from 18 on, I've kind of just been a Lone Ranger. So
Wow. And
yeah.
how did you meet your husband?
We met, he is in the Marine Corps, and he had just gotten back from deployment the day before. And I invited him to a little get together I was having, and we had some mutual friends, and it was literally love at first sight. I was living in California at the time,
Oh,
and just kind of doing the whole nomad thing in my early 20s. And within 6 months of meeting, we got married, and we were on our way to Okinawa, Japan, our first duty station. So, yeah.
wow. I have relatives who went there, but we'll talk about that later. Um, so were you raised then with your adopted parents? Were they believers?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
My adopted mom was a minister in children's ministry also, and so even though I've had quite a very difficult childhood, the Lord has really been very providential in my life, and His hand has been very evident in also just that I've had private Christian school most of my education,
Hmm.
and just very evident that He is has had a hand in my life. So.
And how long have you been married and do you have children?
We have been married. April will be, I had to think for a minute, 13 years. And we have two girls. Brooklyn Grace is 11 and Maddox Magnolia is 6.
Oh,
And we
what great.
homeschool them also.
You homeschool.
We do homeschool.
Wow. And so there's 6 and 11. What great names.
Yep.
Well, I'm partial to girls. You know, I have three. I'm either at the bank
Yeah.
or on my knees, as they say, as I say all the time. How has that background, because that is an unusual background in my experience,
Mm-hmm.
helped form who you are today?
I would say it is the core of who I am. It has really taught me to seek to understand people and
Why? Why?
um, mostly because everyone has a story, and everyone has a reason that they act the way that they do or they believe the way that they believe. And it has just really taught me to seek to understand feelings and emotions of people. I might not understand exactly that what got them to that feeling,
Mhm.
but I have really developed the capability to just sit with someone in their feelings, because I've walked through so many hard feelings of grief and separation and saying goodbyes. And I think I've really just become a master of the gospel of goodbyes and
Oh, wow.
what that looks like for our family.
Not like a master of
Only
arts, though.
because
The
we got
master,
them.
yeah, master of the what? The gospel. Why do you call it a gospel of goodbyes? Because it's not good news.
That I guess that could be relative, because even though I think goodbyes can be good, depending
Yes,
on
it
the way
could.
you look at it. Before Jesus in my life, the goodbyes wreaked havoc in my life. I never said goodbye to my birth family when I was 10. We just moved. I never said goodbye to my friends, my cousins, aunts, uncles. And then just all my whole life has been goodbyes. And then because God has a wonderful sense of humor. I married a Marine, and we've moved about 7 to 8 different duty stations.
Wow.
I actually lost count because I can't count anymore. But
Wow.
we we say goodbye a lot,
Yeah.
and we say goodbye a lot to each other, and we say goodbye to a lot of friends. But when I embraced not just goodbyes, but it's the gospel of goodbyes, I have realized that the Lord has given me a message, and it is our duty to disciple the people around us and to send them out and to disciple. And therefore, it's not just a goodbye, it's a gospel of goodbyes. And it's good news when we think of what Paul and even not even Jesus, but ultimately Jesus, he said goodbye. He said, but the best news is he's coming back. And
Wow.
so use that time wisely.
That is beautiful. The gospel of goodbyes. I don't like goodbyes. My kids will come home and visit like for a weekend. And when they leave, especially my youngest is very tenderhearted, and I'll say, it's okay, just get in the car and go. Let me know when you get there. But I have to go watch like a Mission Impossible, something to distract me because I just start crying. And it's so dumb because, I'm kind of glad everybody's gone. It's just easier to cook. And, but I feel that loss. And I think it's
Right.
good. I think it's good for us, like what you say, to embrace the pain a little bit and seek God in it because he has something for us in all of our feelings, in the losses as
Mhm.
well as in the gains. And I think we can pay more, at least me, I can pay more attention to him in my losses than in my successes. And and
Absolutely.
and so that is so beautiful. There is a gal on Instagram I'll have to tell you about later. She ministers to sports wives. And I just think, that's again another thing where they have to pick up and leave because their husband, the coach, got fired that day and they have to be, or they're called to a different team and they have to go and place their children in new schools. I mean, it's truly a unique situation that you have. You say this, your military life and your Christian life has made you feel folded into a forever family. What does that mean to you?
So, because of my childhood, I oftentimes will say that I don't have what feels like a relationship with anyone I can call mom. I actually don't have anybody in my life I call mom. I've never called anybody dad in my life. And I remember one day I was crying to someone and saying how to a mentor that I feel like when I get to heaven, I'm just going to be myself. There's not going to be a family waiting for me or anybody celebrating. And this mentor looked at me and said, Alyssa, there are people from Japan and Italy and Georgia and Texas, and you pick the place, and they're going to be at the gates cheering for you because what I think of the scripture where in Matthew, I believe it is, where when you give up your things to follow the Lord, he blesses you tenfold. And no matter where I go in our military life, in this military mission field, I have an immediate older woman that could be like a mother to me. I have a friend that's like a sister. I have other friends that are like the aunts to my children.
Mm,
And so the blessing with Christianity and military is that it's like an instant, not just community, but they're family. They're the people that you do Christmas with, you do Easter with,
mm,
their birthday parties. It's every mom's fear that it's your child's birthday and you think, well, who's going to come?
right.
And no one's going to come to my child's birthday. And sometimes I just sit back during the birthday party now and just smile and praise God because have all these people from all of these, even just in the short time that we've been here.
Mhm.
It's just such a blessing to be able to serve the Lord and that he blesses us for it with people.
We recently met a couple who are in the military and they have Thanksgiving. I asked them for Thanksgiving. They said, well, we have our own Thanksgiving. We invite all these people now who come because they've known them. They'll come from out of state, even military, a lot of singles. And they called, I can't remember what they call it, but they're all from broken homes. And so they're like the broken home, the broken home Thanksgiving. They're the little well of comfort for all these people. And it's kind of
Yeah,
funny, but sad too, but good for them that they do this and that
absolutely.
they welcome others in such a beautiful way. How did you and your husband, well, you said you can't, when you went away from the Lord, what brought you back?
Oh, that's a big question. I think what really started it was our girls. we had our daughter Brooklyn, and I think as you get older, you start realizing, you want to go back to church, and you kind of want to start doing more meaningful things as a family. But what really brought me back, really, I think, was just being at the bottom of being alone. We were in Okinawa for the second time. And I had just had my youngest daughter, Maddox, and we lived out in town in Okinawa, so off base in the middle of Japan.
Wow.
And my husband came home one day and said, I'm going to go to Kuwait. So we were already forward deployed to Okinawa, and he was going to go to Kuwait for 6 months.
Oh, no.
And I turned to him and I said, I think I'm going to quit my job and homeschool. And he was like, well, you don't believe in homeschool, because I was in school for education, and I believe that teachers should teach. And the Lord has really just humbled my heart in a lot of ways in that area. And so I did. I quit and I started homeschooling, which homeschooling already can be a very isolating world. But then I was doing it as a first-time homeschooler in the middle of Japan, not knowing anything or anybody about it. And I had never felt that kind of alone. And I was just incredibly isolated. Some nights I would just stay up all night and would abuse the amount of just wine I was drinking, and to the point where I didn't know if I could do another day of it. But the saving grace was that because I had grown up in the church and I knew that I wanted my daughters to grow up that way, I joined a homeschool community. And that homeschool community taught me what community really meant. They literally came up on both sides of me and raised me up and held me up when I couldn't literally do it on my own. That woman today is still one of my greatest mentors. I'm going to get emotional thinking about how much she has blessed my life. And
was she a military wife as well?
Yes, she was, and she still is. And she just really taught me. I remember one day she came to me and said, this Hillsong song about new wine just reminds me of you for some reason. And it actually played this morning as I was getting ready, praying for this conversation. And I just new wine coming out of me. And that I just really, so my husband and I both grew up believing in God, but we didn't really live a Christian life. And so once we really realized what the gospel says, and reading the book of John and reading really not just picking verses from the Bible, but truly reading God's word, it absolutely radically changed my life of what was in God's living word.
And this woman, did this woman take you to the word, or you just went on your own, or what?
No, at the same time, I was going to a church that was a very gospel community, like missional community church. And so I was a part of a missional community group. And so I bring the girls by myself while my husband was deployed, and I felt awkward because everyone's there with their husband and I'm there by myself. But I just knew that I was tired of feeling alone, and I didn't want to be alone anymore.
Have you ever felt alone since?
Oh, absolutely. I think our feelings that's not a feeling that goes away. And I don't think our feelings go away when we surrender our lives to the Lord, but it's more of what we do with those feelings and how do we turn that sadness into his glory. I stopped asking, why is this happening to me, versus what will you have me learn in this situation? And so when we moved to Missouri, we moved early from our last duty station, 6 months early. And I didn't want to move, even though I prayed, here I am, Lord, send me. We got orders to the middle of Missouri.
You said, I didn't really mean that, Lord. That's what you said.
No, I did not mean that. I thought Zimbabwe would be cool, but not in the middle of Missouri. No.
That's funny. Lord, I surrender almost, not all.
Yeah, go ahead. Exactly.
But not the Midwest. Lord, save me. Is Missouri the South?
It's the Midwest.
Okay.
It's pretty much almost in the middle, next to Kansas.
They
even call it lost in the woods. It's so isolating here and lonely. And I did feel incredibly lonely while we first moved here. And I noticed certain behaviors in my life started creeping back up, and I ran to the Lord, and I decided that this can't happen. If I'm a born again believer, I need to make some serious changes. And so a group of women and I started cultivating a community.
Hmm.
And
How did you do that though? Because I find that if I'm feeling a little blue, like I did Tuesday, I don't necessarily reach out to get someone to help me. I just curl in more, which is unusual for me because I'm such an extrovert. So if you're already feeling blue, because we're talking today to a lot of women who are feeling blue, I'm sure, off and on, maybe not all the time. How do you get the gumption to go and say, hey, would you come over? Let's play games or let's talk about our families or something?
so for me, I've learned that if I'm invited somewhere and I really don't want to go, to say yes, and
You're
just
talking to
say
a world of
yes.
introverts here who are saying, are you kidding? That's the Lord
Yes.
showing me not to
Yeah.
go. If I'm invited, say yes.
Yes. And so what really pulled me out of feeling what was going towards really some dark depression was there was a women's ministry retreat here. I had attended some Bible studies a couple times, but I didn't really fully get involved. And there was a women's ministry event that a certain weekend, and I mentioned it to my husband, and he was like, "You should go." And I thought, "No, I'm not going to do that." He probably was more of like, "Just get off. You need to get off the couch, like get
Yes.
out of the house."
Yeah. Yeah.
When I went, the feeling of just women around me, that was enough for me to realize, this is a good feeling, and the Lord has more for me. And then in the message of the weekend, that the Lord has really provided for me about how He humbled us and He sustains us. And even though we go through hard times, He does it to teach us and to grow us. And again, what are we to learn in the situation versus why is this happening and wallowing in it? And then from there, just meeting connections with women and that are like-minded and having small conversations. And I found that the older I get, it's not necessarily the quantity of friends, but just a few good friends is all that I need to really navigate this crazy life.
Yeah. I speak on this a lot. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if I talked on that when I came to your church, but I say, extroverts need about 13 good friends and an introvert maybe needs 2, but they need that too. And but when you're wallowing, and I don't mean wallowing like it's a shaming thing, but you just feel sad because no one's
Mhm.
called you to go to Starbucks. No one's asked if they could sit with you. I mean, I met a new couple at church last Sunday, and we're having a huge church potluck, all 3 services meeting in a park on Sunday. And I said, if you guys come, you can sit with Mark and I. But they were kind of like hightailing it out of the church. And I thought, I don't think they really need me, but maybe someone else would. And so I call it our hospitality antenna. And I know you have it, Alyssa, but you learned it through pain. And a hospitality antenna is really a reaching out for someone who seems to be alone, and to walk into a room and say, and look around, say, Lord, is there someone here who feels worse than I do and I feel bad? And go sit with them and just find out about their life. So I think through our pain, God then winnows us out of our pride. And then I think we become more empathetic with somebody else. Don't you feel that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, even though I might not be the one that's going to be their friend, I found
Right.
too, perhaps that I'm going to connect you to someone else that you two are going to connect. And I have found that often, and to learn that not to wallow in that either. Why is she friends with that person?
Yeah.
I'm the one who
I
introduced that.
introduce them.
But
Yeah.
yeah, what's going on
Yeah.
here? But to realize, no, to rest in that the Lord used me, and the best thing is I get to do it all over again,
Yeah.
and
And also
almost just find
we get
the joy in it.
exalted. Yeah, we get exhausted too. So the Lord, I have one friend, I've known her for years now and a lot younger. And she said, I was talking about you to someone the other day. And I said, Sue brings a lot of people through their house and then she just ushers them out the front door and they just keep going. She goes, but I stayed. And I thought, I'm so glad you stayed, Jean, because she's such a treasure to me. And
Mm.
do you have describe the ministry that you feel the military wives in particular need from your own
Mm.
experience?
They really just need people that will come alongside them and be. Sometimes we just need someone to watch our children because we need a doctor's appointment and we
Mhm.
don't have an aunt or a friend or a mom or someone that we can drop our kids off with. And we don't want to pay $25 to $35 an hour
An
because
hour.
we physically can. And sometimes just having that, hey, just the other weekend, we had a young single soldier. She needed childcare because she had to work on a Saturday. And we're like, absolutely, bring them on over. We're going to be here anyway. And not even just necessarily not necessarily military wives, but even single service members. They have a whole world that they go through navigating as single parents, and
Definitely.
that we wouldn't imagine unless you are sitting there and seeking to understand and listen to them. And ultimately, I think that what women are looking for are just open couches and open hearts. And it's not looking for this big, charcuterie board display of what's this beautiful meal. But even if it's just a cup, actually, I think I learned it from you. If you have water, you can host, and not even hosting, but you can be hospitable. And I found that if I can just pour a bowl of cereal in a big old bowl and pop some popcorn, the kids have a snack and something to do to entertain the children. And most of the time, military women, they just want someone to listen to them, or they might not feel like talking, but they just want someone to sit with them. And it's hard to start over every 2 to 3 years and find brand new homes, brand new churches, a brand new dentist, brand new everything. But to just have someone sit with you, you're bound to have something in common.
Doesn't the military already know that if they want to keep their soldiers happy, that they have a network as soon as someone joins a new base, that there's a list of where to get your hair cut, who's a good dentist, here's a pediatric dentist for your kid. They don't have that set in stone already?
For the most part, it's the wives that really do a good job with that through Facebook groups. And
Okay.
for an example, let's say that we were going to get orders today to our next duty station. I would go to a Facebook group pages and type in churches, type in dentist, and look at what the women have recommended to each other. While I think that the military is trying to really cultivate more of a community that is family friendly, ultimately, at least in the Marine Corps, they'll say, well, if the Marine Corps, wanted a wife, they would have issued you one, and that we're mission first and that family comes second. And so to be able to understand that and be respectful of our husbands' jobs, or wives, if we are a spouse at home like that as a man, then we let them do that, and we stay home, we take care of all the things. And typically the wife will tell you, we're going to live here, and this is the church, and this is what's going to happen, and we're going to go to, this is the grocery store.
Yeah.
I wish that you signed in and it was like, okay, great, here's a list of things. But typically it's more of just the community that you cultivate. And so going back to the question of, you asked, how did I get the women involved in our home, in the group study that we've started here, was I kind of had to feel bold. And I even just posted on the Facebook page of our local base and said, there's a book study starting, and all women are welcome, and there's no condemnation in what you believe or don't believe, but just maybe you're alone and you're looking for people and that are like-minded, and please come, bring a dish, don't bring a dish. I've had a woman just bring a bag of carrots one time because that's all she had. And
love it.
But it's just such a joy that it's lifelong lasting friendships that have developed because of, we have the loneliness in common, we have children in common. We all share a love for the Lord. And then ultimately also the military is a way that we can connect with each other differently than we can with those in the civilian world.
Yeah, so true. Do you have a special vision for how you and your husband will continue in this ministry even after retirement?
I was just asked this today from one of my professors.
Oh.
I don't.
That's all right.
He is going to retire in about 5 years. And we just have been feeling more and more called to military families and what that looks like. Really, definitely, the Lord just kind of laid Aquila and Priscilla on our hearts, and to serve together, and what that looks like for single service members, and then also families. And we both are very family oriented people. And so something along the lines of discipling families and opening our home and really just kind of showing them our story and how God is the hero of our story and how God can be the hero of their story. And just to continue to equip them to do that on their next duty station. But no, there's not a plan.
Well, he could be a chaplain and then he would still be in the service and you get good benefits. That's just a thought. But I'm not your mother, but I'd love to be your mother. How can
I'm in the market for one. So
okay. You don't even have
yes.
to have red hair because none of my children have red hair. I asked my mother-in-law once, I said, I found out from a lady at a park that you have to have red hair on both sides of the family. Is there any red hair on your side of the family? She goes, absolutely not. I said, I'm never going to have a redhead. So I stopped having children. Well, I was also 44, so I needed to stop. How can not, and this is for all the rest of us who are listening who are not military, how can non-military men and women help support you all? Like it, because we have a military base about an hour away, so we don't get a lot, but we get other people who's like even doctors' wives can feel very lonely. I was very lonely the
Absolutely.
first 15 years because Mark was on call every 3 nights when I had 3 kids, and that even the one time I said, look, I didn't get married to go to church by myself. That's what I told him. And he said, if I don't pick up the phone, someone dies. And I thought, well, that's being a little melodramatic, but I guess he was correct.
Yeah.
So, whoa, so hoity-toity. So off he went, and I went to church with the kids by myself. But yeah, it's something you have to learn in every community. So what did I ask you? Oh yeah, what can we do to help you?
I was thinking, I thought of 3 things. So the first one was just be hands. Um, maybe it's just holding the baby while she's unloading all the kids out of the car and she feels anxious because now the baby's crying during the church service and now she's sweating bullets because she
Right.
wants to be there. She's feeling the thing. Sometimes just saying, how can I help? Or how can I help you? Or just take the child and help her in that way. Another thing I was thinking is that sometimes just offering, I know not everyone wants to be someone that can watch children, but even if she has children, to just to say, can we help you this week on a Wednesday so you can just go get your hair done or just go have a cup of coffee by yourself.
Yeah.
And even or just DoorDash dinner for her, order a pizza, and I'm sure she will remember you for life.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is for churches, oftentimes we hear that they don't want to pour into service members because they're going to be gone. They're going to, well, what's the point? They're going to move.
That's a terrible thing to say.
I would agree. We came from a church in that where I met you that basically said, we don't care how long you're going to be here. We just have to love you harder then. And that always stuck with me.
Wow.
And that I think if more churches embraced their temporary congregants, they would see that there are free missionaries worldwide. They don't even have to sponsor them financially. If they would just pour into them, they already know that they're going to be sent out. And if the church's goal is to make God's name's famous, not their church's name famous, then they definitely have a free mission field.
Wow. Isn't that the case? We raised our kids with international students. It was my part-time job, so I got paid. But it was a way to work without working outside the home. And then I felt like this is the missionaries serving the mission field coming to our house. Like they were trapped. They had to say a Bible verse every night to practice their English. And some were very close with still. And it's great to see the fruit, but God is so creative. If you're feeling bad because you married someone who didn't want to be a missionary and now you're stuck in Torrance, California, ask God to bring someone into your life because there's just no end to the joy. There's also grieving because people leave. And also not everyone accepts Jesus, but that's not yours and my responsibility, Alyssa.
Absolutely.
It's our responsibility to pour into them God's love without entrapment. I mean, I invite people over where we don't talk about Jesus. I just invite them over. And I'm hoping they'll pick up on the aroma of Christ, even as they see, that there are dog bones all over the house, whatever. It's imperfect hospitality. And I know that you understand that. But I'm praying for the day to be able to say, hey, I know you're you're feeling a little lost, can I tell you what Jesus did for you? But not to do it part of, not make it like a requirement. Because I think a lot of
Right.
people think, well, I didn't go to seminary, even like Alyssa, we didn't mention that, but you are in seminary, but you don't have to go to seminary to love on people who are lonely.
Absolutely. Well, then I also think too, imagine if Jesus loved us with strings attached. What if he loved us the way that we love people that we know are gonna leave? I used to say, I don't want to get close to them because I'm gonna have to say goodbye. And I'm so grateful that he doesn't love us that way. He doesn't say, Alyssa was gonna walk away, but or you're gonna sin tomorrow. He loves us regardless, and he loves us unconditionally. And if we loved people the same way, and we approached our as military community, or just as anybody in a community, if we approached where we live with the same intentionality that Jesus did with his mission, because he also lived 3 years in ministry. Most duty stations are 3 years. And so
Wow.
if we approached with that same intentionality, can you imagine the impact that we would have in our local communities? And then not only local, but we're bound to go out. We have to leave. We
Yeah.
have to go be missional. It's not a choice.
Yeah.
So,
You have to go, but not everybody's missional. So it's really a mindset. Okay, we have to go. I'm sorry. I'm sad about it, but I wonder what God has for us next, who God has for us next. As I mentioned to you, my sister moved 14 times, and each time she had to make a new set of friends, and it gets wearisome. And you worry about
mhm,
your 4 kids, and well, they have 4. And how is God going to meet their needs in this new school or whatever it is? And it's hard on a mom. And so I
mhm,
sympathize, but it's also a mindset of, I wonder what God has for us next and who God has for us next. Because I find that there's always someone who has a worse story than I do. And that
mhm.
whatever struggle I've been through, God will use that. That's in 2 Corinthians 1:3. What do you wish you could have experienced when you were a new military wife
Mm.
that would have been of encouragement to you?
We were we were newlywed living overseas.
Wow.
And then we got married in April. And then by October, we were expecting our first girl already. And I think that would have really just helped was, well, at that time, we did have friends that were very hospitable, and we did life together. We did everything together. The difference was it wasn't oriented towards Christ, and it was very worldly based. But if I had an older woman come along, and even though I know how to sweep the floor, if she would have said, "Do you want to come over and help me just hang out?" Or, "I'm just going to be folding laundry," or "I'm making this new loaf of bread," or "I'm going to sweep the floor." I think that would have been wonderful, because we don't have moms. We live far away from them, or
Mhm,
like myself, I don't have a connection with somebody.
mhm.
But just really coming along and doing life as, with each other. I think sometimes that we think, well, she's okay, she's got it. I don't want to be a bother. I think that people feel intimidated by that, but we want you to ask us. We want to come do life with you. We don't want to be alone. And the least that can happen is you say no, and then you next do it again the next time, and you keep going, because eventually someone's going to say yes.
I
And
love that because it does take, as a hostess, it does take courage. It takes courage
mhm,
to invite. I had one friend tell me, well, I don't do hospitality anymore because people don't come. And I thought, well, she's been hurt. I'm not judging her, but that's so sad. But I think just keep inviting, because, like you
mhm,
just said, there'll be that one who says, yes. I've also invited people and thinking, well, I really hope these people come because I like them better. We have certain,
mhm,
God has made us with affinities. We have certain,
mhm.
oh, I really like her. And they were not the ones who came. The ones who were a little more tricky as far as personality, they're the ones who needed to be at my table. And I need to just get over myself, because Jesus welcomes all. And we don't really know how someone's day really is, because they're not going to say, by the way, I'm lonely. Would you please invite me over?
Right. And I think that comes back to also that there comes a place where I think we have to be a little vulnerable with our stories, we don't necessarily have to say everything in every detail, but if you think about the people that you relate to the most likely it's going to be someone that you heard a story and you connected with them. And I know that as when I look at leaders, I look at someone that I could emulate, or I look at somebody that, oh, wow, they're a real person too, versus oh, I could never be like that person. I could never be holy like that person is. And that used to make me run further from the church and from people than anything. And then I realized when I am authentic with my story and saying, this is where I was and this is where I'm at. And I found when we come alongside and we get to know each other a little bit more, we can understand each other and we can share each other's lives a little bit more. And I think that sometimes we are so guarded. A lot of times that's because we've been hurt before. And it does take a lot of faith to say, I'm going to share this part about me, and in hopes that God gets the glory and that I'm not going to be hurt by it. But I think that if we open up our hearts a little bit more and we share a little bit more about ourselves, I think that not only is the other person not feeling lonely, but in some weird way that the Lord works, we also feel comforted in that too, that we've made a connection with somebody.
Makes all the difference. Someone reminded me on text yesterday about, remember that story where Jesus went after just the one sheep? We don't have to have 40 people in our home. We can just go after that one because God is going after that one through your invitation. How would you describe your hospitality ministry right now?
Right now, I'm currently on a break. I was doing since January until last month, I was doing a couple book studies with some ladies. We had about 18 on average.
Wow.
At one point, as studies go, they kind of dwindled down, but we had about 20, 25 children, and we had to hire a sitter come and help take care of them all. And because I am in seminary and I also homeschool, it was time for a season of rest, and also to let other women kind of take opportunity to lead as well. But I found that right now my hospitality is to be intentional with the one and to be intentional with individuals. It's a little hard to be intentional with stories and with people and their feelings when you're sitting in a group of them, but to be able to do one-on-one and to meet with them. And so currently it's just having people over for dinner, whether it be for my husband, he'll invite recently who did we have over? He was a Marine who was struggling with some relational issues. And then we've had an international student from Germany, German Army, I guess he came over, and then entering into a discipleship relationship with me with a single female Marine who's getting ready to go overseas for her first duty station as well. And so really just being intentional with individuals versus trying to have this really big study and these really big numbers, but to really just do life. And we're just not having a fancy dinner. We were going to eat fried chicken anyway, or we were going to order pizza anyway, and just come alongside and sit with us. And we're going to read our Bible stories as a family.
That's so great. I remember one gal I interviewed, she said, I'm not a cook, Sue, so I don't think we need to talk about hospitality. But then she tells me this story where she goes to her kid's basketball game and she sits down next to another mother who's going through a divorce or something. So she just invites her over and they order pizza or whatever. And it's not a big deal. The food is not the issue. It's the invitation and coming alongside. Now, I didn't interview you because of your hospitality heart, though I have noticed it on Instagram. I also like the Instagram I saw recently, something about your to-do list. That's your don't list.
Oh, yes.
I don't have my phone with me, but I took a picture of it.
I have it.
Okay. Read me your to-don't list for the fall. I think it's a blessing.
Yes, because I was saying yes to everything.
Yes.
And I was out, and
excuse me.
All right, so my don't do list was to ignore my soul care plan.
So you're not going to ignore it.
I'm not going to ignore it.
Okay.
And then to not take on more than one ministry. To not be busy every single night of the week this fall. To not neglect fully embracing a slow Sunday,
Hmm.
um, not to make a decision I won't make a decision without prayer, consulting the word and my husband. I like to skip the husband part
Yeah,
and see what
don't
his
we all?
input is.
Yeah, because they take
Yeah.
too long to figure out what to say. And besides, we know what we're going to say, so we're not going to ask them.
Yeah, exactly. To not ignore the don't disturb or rest settings on my phone. I will put don't disturb for certain hours of my day, like 1 hour at night for my husband, a couple hours in the morning for our homeschool, but I will ignore it and I will continue to just answer. And so I wanted to take advantage of that. I wanted to not get out of rhythm with my routines and schedules. And then also to be, I didn't want to avoid being accountable to a friend about what's on my plate and to ask them if I'm serving from a place of empty or am I serving from a place of overflow, because they can see into my life so much better than possibly I can sometimes.
And so you gave them permission to be accountable to you. You to be
Yes.
accountable to them, right? And we do need to give our closest friends permission because even our closest friends don't want to tell us what to do. But if we say, would you please remind me that I said I wouldn't do this? And then they go, okay. And then you say, don't forget to tell me because I'll go ahead and do it. I think it
Yeah, the
shows
Lord
true
has really
love.
blessed me with about 3 really good. One of them called it an iron friend,
Yes,
and
iron
how iron
sharpening.
sharpens iron,
Yes,
and I love that.
yes. So
And
repeat that: serving from a place of overflow or burnout. Was that the other part?
from empty or from a place of overflow.
Okay. Okay, got that. Anything else?
Oh, no, that it was just to be intentional with the Lord. And the goal was to be intentional with the Lord and my family and then individual friends. I noticed that I wasn't being intentional with individual relationships. And so that was the plan and the goal.
How do you
So
define intentional with your relationships?
versus being like just like truly checking in. How are you really doing today? Would you like to get together? I have a friend that just this week we weren't able to get together. And so putting on the calendar, October 8th, we are getting together, put it down because no one tells you that as your kids get older, you don't really have time to be a friend very much as an adult. And so to really intentionally put time on the calendar and even if it's just instead of texting, I'm praying for you, we will send voice messages to each other with a prayer of what's just praying for you today and whatever it may be that they're going through, because they're all going through different things in life. And so just kind of versus just small talk texting, really asking the hard questions. Is everything okay? I'm praying for your marriage or whatever it may be that they're going through. And so, and asking, what can I do to help you this week? Is there anything that I can do to be there for you? Sometimes it's no, and sometimes it's actually, can you watch the kids? We're struggling right now and we need a date night. And then the best thing is you get to return the favor. And then sometimes we get a date night out of it too. And so
I like what you say about putting it on the calendar. I feel like with hospitality and with friendships, if it's not on the calendar, it won't happen. I had a friend call me yesterday and said, so when can we meet? And I thought, never. I'm so busy. But I looked at my calendar and I chose 2 Mondays in October. And I said, either one of these, will they work? Because she's just as busy. She can't fault me. Busy in a good way, not in a bad word. It's not a bad word if you're doing it for the Lord, I guess. And you're doing it because he said to. And she chose one of the dates and we're having lunch in 3 weeks. And then she goes, well, I'm kind of busy that day. I thought, oh, good. It won't be a long lunch then. And if you go out, it kind of cuts the time off. If you have someone over, they could stay and stay and stay. And like, sometimes you have to walk them out the door. I've had to do that because there are boundaries. As you know, this is a legacy podcast. And I won't tell you the story behind that right now, but you can listen to my first couple ones and you'll figure it out. But what do you want to leave for those who know and love you, Alyssa?
I would like to leave a legacy that I feel that I've broken a cycle of abuse and of being to realize that I don't live a Alyssa-centered life, but I live a Christ-centered life, and that I haven't just been a survivor of abuse, but that I thrived by, it's not I who live, but it's Christ in me. And that I've used my story to intentionally create community and a life of change, that my life has been marked by change, and that ultimately that I've been brought home by the gospel. I hope that people can see that when they see my life.
They can. And I like what you said earlier about being vulnerable. You don't want to hang out all your dirty laundry maybe the first time you talk to somebody. But if you hint at it, it gives them permission to share their story. And maybe that's what they need to do, because you feel a certain shame even when you're the victim. There's a shame there. That's the Satan is so good at shaming. And we shame us from the pit, and we are not pit people. But even someone at my age can go down into it, slide right down into that hole, and it's wrong. It's not how Christ saved us. How are you living this now?
I think we've really touched on it overall, of just the ministry of my home and with our community. And I'm not ashamed to share, my sin and what I've struggled with. And really just pointing to that, I found out my identity is not, I am Alyssa, but my identity is Christ. And that when I realized who I am and whose I am, that I've started living that way, and to just shout it from the rooftops with boldness. And that, and I think that has encouraged my friends to also live that way, and to really just be someone that they know that when I say I pray for them, I'm really praying for them. And then I can see certain steps that I take being mirrored into their lives as well. And ultimately, it's not me that they're mirroring, it's our good Father. And so it's just such a joy to serve them.
It's such a joy. The other day on my podcast mastermind group, they were talking about SEO. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And, using certain words in your description on your podcast or in your ministry, so that people who will Google, I want to learn how to be a good Christian military wife, your name would come up. So that's the whole thing about Googling and SEO, search engine optimization. That's what it is. And so I thought later, well, I want to be, and the person who was speaking said, well, it's just a way of being findable, so that your podcast is findable for someone who wants to know about finances, or about military, or about living a legacy life. And I thought, well, I don't have any of those things up there, but I want my life to be findable for Jesus. And so that if someone is looking for soul satisfaction, life eternal, and knowing Christ, that they will find all those things through me. And that's not being famous, that's being God famous. And as you were saying, that you are not the hero of your story, and I am not the hero of my story. And even with good parents who make mistakes, we still survive, and we have to change. Philip Yancey calls it breaking the chain of ungrace. You received ungraces, and you are breaking the chain through God's help. But we've all received some ungraces. My mother did, and then I got some from my mom, and then I'm sure I created a bunch from my poor kids. So we're going to all be in therapy.
Right.
But the idea is that we go to Jesus to help break that chain, and that's what you have done. How does your life embody the welcoming heart of God?
This is a hard question, because I don't think I want to toot my own horn in any way. But from what I've heard from friends is that the fruit of my life is evident. And it's evident in my children. I would say that embodying can you repeat the question? I got kind of stunned.
No, it's okay. How does your life look like God's welcome heart? Because he's welcomed you, he's welcomed me. So how do we reflect that? I mean, I can tell you how you do it, but I'd like to hear your answer.
I think just by being authentic and saying that there's a seat at this table for anybody. You're never too far gone. And in all honesty, I wanted to back out of this podcast because when I looked at the list of people from your previous episodes, they're all great people with websites and books and other things. And I thought, well, I'm not worthy of any of that. But then I realized that really none of us are worthy of anything. But what I do know is that I was invited to the table and to come eat and to come see. And the least I can do is to invite anybody to come eat at this table. And if I ran out of room, we'll just get a bigger table. And I don't want anyone to ever feel that they're inadequate or that they have to wash themselves up to come to the Lord. And I just try to share that as much as I possibly can to say, really kind of like the blind man is when they're like, hey, what happened? And he's like, you know what? All I know is I was blind, but now I see.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happened, but
Yeah.
all I know is Alyssa was so blind, but now I see. And I want everyone to have that same amazing vision that I have.
So beautiful.
So
well, God is
I
going
don't know
to.
if that answers the question.
Oh, totally answers it. It reminds me of an old Reader's Digest story where a regular person was invited to a rich man's house. And when he got there, he realized everybody was wearing evening wear, like tuxes, which would never happen in my house. But that the host noticed that the one guest was just wearing a regular sports jacket, no tie. And so when he got to the table, he untied his tie and took off his coat and put it on the back of his chair. And then everybody else around the table did the same. And it was to welcome the one sheep. And that's what we do. You know, it's because that's what Jesus did. God sent his son to come to the earth to die for our sins so that there's always room at God's table. Thank you so much, Alyssa. This will be such a blessing to everyone who hears it. And thank you for not canceling.
Yeah, you're welcome.